Durag Diaries. Tottenham won. Newcastle won. And to be honest, it was a very boring game. A very boring game. Game started off a lot better, than it panned out to be in the second half. It was a bit end to end. The first half was pretty good. You could say Newcastle had the better of us in that sense. But more than anything, the biggest takeaway from the game was Maddison injured again. And it's awful to see because he only just come back from injury recently, been joining the team of training, played a grand total of 10 minutes in the game against Arsenal, if even that. Comes on again today, was going to have a bit of a longer period, more of a 20 minutes, 25 minutes, to build up his fitness. Comes on, it seems like it was an off the contact, no contact challenge. He turns really weirdly and he just pulls up. He was on the floor. He ends up getting stretchered off. And it's a huge, huge concern for us going into the season now. Obviously, rest up to Maddison. I hope he gets better. But the biggest concern is we now have injuries to two of our main attacking outlets from last season. Now, we already knew Maddison was injury prone, so we had to look at signing somebody who could fill in the space when he is injured. But now this goes to show the more importance as to why Spurs need to make this signing ASAP. We need it. We've looked at Enzo Miller. We've looked at Xavi Simons. We need to look at bringing in a number 10 ASAP because the creativity is just not there when he's not playing. Even today, when you're looking on the pitch, we started off with a midfield of Gray, Bentancur, and Sarr. Sarr playing the further forward of the three. In the last game, we all highlighted how good Sarr was in the 8. And to be fair to him today, he done a decent job. Wasn't really too attacking because we wasn't pressing high up on the Newcastle team apart from in that first 15 or 20 minutes. And the way that we ended up getting the goal was off the back of a high press, goalkeeper playing out from the back, played it down the middle from the center. I think he played it into Fabian Schär. Fabian Schär played it out, tried to find Jacob Murphy in the middle of the pitch, or Joe Linton, sorry. And it was just a really good press from Danso, who manages to get in front of it, flicks the ball into Johnson's path, who then just carries the ball ever so slowly onto the edge of the area before finding the corner. It took a slight deflection off the Newcastle player, but it was a very good goal from Johnson on that sense to get Tottenham up and started, and just 5 minutes into the game have us leading. But onwards from there, it was a lot more of a structured defensively structured performance where, similar to that second half of Arsenal, we put a lot of men behind the ball, especially in the end, those last half hour of the first half. Newcastle were battering us. Down that left-hand side, the 1v1 battle between Jacob Murphy and Davies was just unfair. It was just unfair. Jacob Murphy was just causing too many problems. And then he's having Trippier double up on him with the double team. That was causing another issue because every time Murphy would get to the byline and he may not beat Davies, he's cutting it back for Trippier, who's then putting the first time cross into the box. Where they created a dangerous opportunities. They had a few opportunities where Joe Linton met it with the header and it just went wide of the post. And then there was also an opportunity where it fell to Anthony Gordon, who broke down that right-hand side one time, cut it back across the goal. And it just needed a flick on. Just needed somebody to touch it into an open net because Kinski was so close to the near post. And then they didn't take the advantage of that opportunity. When they did eventually take advantage of the opportunity, they did catch us in the transition. So that was one thing to probably look at and focus on. That Spurs will get caught in a transition at times. And I think we committed a few too much bodies forward in the corner for us to them. When they did counter on us, they just found themselves through with open space. Harvey Barnes running in the 1v1 just pretty much had the whole left-hand channel open to him before Pedro Porro come across and covered the space where you could say he created the angle. But because Harvey Barnes is right-footed, he was always going to drop at the shoulder, flick it onto his right. He just had that bit too much space and that gap between him and Pedro Porro that allowed him to find the corner. And he just done a really, really strong finish. He went the post and in, and can't really blame Anthony Kinski for not saving that one. But all round, I think for me, it was a so-so performance. I wasn't majorly happy with it, but I wasn't majorly upset with it. It was good to see Sonny in his last game get a really strong farewell. The whole game stopped for when the substitution for him happened. All the Newcastle fans and players gave him a clap. The Tottenham players went off and hugged everybody. You could see him, taking in the moment for where it was a very emotional one at the last game in his home country for his club. It was definitely emotional. He had a few chances in the game himself. Seemed like Spurs had opted to leave him a lot further up the pitch with Tell dropping in a bit more. He was the furthest option forward. And he had a few times where he's through on goal. At first, in the first half, again, he was offside a lot of the times. And I think he was maybe a little bit too eager early on to get that goal or get that opportunity. But then as the game went on, he kept getting the ball, and I suppose he's doing the things that we expect from Sonny at this point. And he was just moving a bit slow of his decision-making. Did have one or two shots, but didn't really come off to challenge the goalkeeper enough. So on that side of things, he didn't come close to scoring a goal, but still, regardless, a very good send-off at that. Newcastle themselves, I think they look pretty decent. They do lack that focal point in the attack. You can tell they're putting a lot of crosses into the area. They're playing a lot of balls down the middle. They're a very direct team, and you can tell that they're missing that Alexander Isak profile or even just player or feel in their team. Because if he was there today, I'm not going to lie, Spurs probably would have lost. I feel like we need to figure out our solution to our striker, because Richarlison just isn't good enough in that role up top. He had one opportunity that you would have expected him to finish. And he just seemed far too relaxed in front of goal, thought that he was going to pass it into the corner, eventually went off the keeper's leg and just wasn't good enough on that sense. So for me, Spurs have still got the same issues going into this game, watching this game, that we had in the last game. Left wing, striker, two positions that probably need to be worked on. Apart from when Odebert's out on that left wing, we look a lot better. He's good when he can cut in off the left, cutting off the right, but also having a left back that can overlap properly and actually, not give us the same thing, that give us the same quality that Udogie would be giving us if he was here. With Davies in there, just not good enough. So there's still quite a few more positions that Spurs need to strengthen. I watched this game and I'm like, we looked okay, but there's a lot of places where we still need to improve in that sense. So there's still more for Tottenham to do in the transfer window, and this game highlights it more. Still not a bad performance. Very strong on the defensive principles of what Thomas Frank has set up, and we look really good in that lower block. And we don't look like we're going to concede a lot of times. They rarely get through to our goal, and it seems like the positions that our midfielders take up are a lot better because they're really covering and shielding the defense. Bentancur done a really good job being the deepest lying midfielder today, more of a playmaker in that role, getting the ball and laying out. And we saw Archie Gray just go a bit more forward. He looked like he was playing more of an 8 today, sort of box to box, working his way into that final third, picking the ball up in their area. And there was one point when he used his little quick feet to get out of himself out of a tough scenario. So again, like, Archie Gray looked decent. It's going to be interesting to see how Paulinho comes into this team and how he's going to be used, and if there is a change in the midfield setup with him being the deepest and just allowing the two other players to roam a little bit more. But a decent game at that. I don't think we can take too much from it. I feel like the second half was very stop-start, so nothing really happened. It was a battle of the midfield, and because there was loads of subs, nobody really got comfortable into the game. And then you had the bunch of subs that were being made, because Spurs made three separate substitutions, and so did Newcastle, 2 or 3 separate substitutions on top of the cooling break, on top of the injury to Maddison, and there was no added time. So I would actually say that half was probably more of a 30 to 35 minute half, and there wasn't really that much that went on. So look, there's not too much that we can take from this game. Decent performance, good defensive structure, but that's all we're gonna take from this one. On to Bayern next, where it's probably going to be a bit more of a tougher friendly, up against Kane, and also Paulinho are going to be joining the team, hopefully for his first involvement in the Spurs shirt for that one. So we will be back. Look out for the watch along for that game on Wednesday. But until then, big up to everyone that's inside. Make sure you smash the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you ain't already. And tap the post notification bell to stay up to date with everything Durag Diaries. Goodbye. God bless. Have a good day.